The Little Books of Blessing. And this second little book of blessing is called The Perfect Home. Let's turn it to the back and see what it reads. So where do people come from? Timmy asked his grandpa as they walked out of the cinema. I mean, Timmy continued, I know where Superman came from and how Spider-Man got his powers, but I don't know how humans came to be here. What's the beginning of our story? Grandpa was at a loss to answer. However, when he read the next chapter of the eternal love story, they learned each person is a unique member of the eternal King's family. In this second little book of blessing, we read how the eternal King created a perfect home for his family and lived with them in a magnificent, majestic garden. The eternal King invites you to discover how you were created a special member of his family. The perfect home. Let's dive in. Timmy tossed his empty popcorn box into the bin and ran to catch up to Grandpa. What a great movie, don't you think? Well, it has certainly changed a lot since I first watched it. Let me think. That was more than 40 years ago. Really? You mean Superman has been around that long? Yes, although I used to read about his adventures in comic books. Do you still have any of them? Timmy asked excitedly. Grandpa ruffled Timmy's hair and chuckled. Maybe. We could have a look for them when we get home. It was not long before they caught sight of Grandma and Timmy's sister Phoebe chatting together as they walked toward their agreed meeting spot. They had just seen the latest Frozen movie and were still chatting when they saw Grandpa and Timmy. So how was it? Asked Grandma. It was awesome, explained Timmy. He's from the planet Krypton. Did you know that, Grandma? Grandma shook her head. Phoebe then shared her experience of Frozen. I love Olaf, the funny snowman best, Grandma agreed. Yes, his antics had me in stitches. Grandpa told me he used to read about Superman in comic books. I think he may still have some at home. Do you think you could find them, Grandma? Oh, that's Grandpa's department, but I do know where we could buy a milkshake before heading home. With the thought of old comic books pushed to the back of Timmy's mind, they eagerly made their way to the cafe. While every lip was wrapped around their straws, sipping frothy milkshakes, Timmy asked pensively, Grandpa, how did people come to be here on Earth? That's an odd question, Timmy. What do you mean? Grandpa took a long sip from his chocolate milkshake. Well, I was thinking about Superman. He wanted to know why he was different from everyone else. He found out that he was originally from the planet Krypton, and his parents sent him to Earth to save him because their planet was going to be destroyed. Before Grandpa could draw Beth, Timmy continued, and Spider-Man got his powers when he was bitten by a radioactive spider. In fact, I know where every one of the Avengers came from. Phoebe joined in, yeah, and Elsa and Anna came from the kingdom of Arendelle, and Moana found out her past from her grandmother Tala. You have to know where someone comes from, otherwise their story doesn't make sense. That's quite true, Grandpa responded, gazing at Grandma, hoping to be rescued. Well now, Grandma simply added, it must be time to head home. As they walked toward the car, Grandpa abruptly announced, You know, Timmy, I think there might be an answer to your question in Grandma's book. Maybe we could read the next chapter together. Timmy nodded in agreement and quickly added, "After we've looked at your old comic books." It seemed to take ages before dinner was over and they could move towards Grandpa's collection of Superman comics now piled at the end of the couch. Although Timmy could barely wait to look at them, Grandpa had said they would read the next chapter of the Eternal Love Story first. As Phoebe helped Grandma clear the table, Timmy ran into his room and carried the enormous book into the kitchen. This time it was Grandpa who opened the heavy cover. It read, "The Eternal Love Story." The eternal author was about to begin his story. The angels tingled with anticipation. They folded their wings and settled down for the next exciting chapter. Leaning forward in his celestial throne, the royal author's eyes sparkled with vitality. "Long before all of you were even a twinkling in my eye, there was a great expanse of dark nothingness. There was nothing to feel, nothing to see, nothing to hear. There was nothing. I was there, of course. My presence is everywhere. My heart beat with a wondrous story. When I looked into the emptiness, I saw potential, a great space waiting to be filled. From this nothingness, I would create everything." The angels peered beyond the borders of heaven into the great abyss which lay beyond. The time had finally arrived for me to create my ultimate gift. "Who is the gift for?" asked a confident seraph. "The gift is for my son, whom I love with every beat of my heart." The kingly author stood to his feet, creative vitality bubbling effervescently in all directions. "Light, go forth and become day." And it did. Shots of energy blazed into the darkness. What a pleasing sight, knowing darkness had now been confined to night. "Sky, separate the waters. Heavenly waters be above, earthly waters be below." A smile confirmed the king's satisfaction. "Land arise, seas recede." What a smile that brought. "Earth burst forth with life, bear fruit." "Heavenly lights blaze, mark the seasons, days and years." The king smiled at their brilliance. "Oceans swarm with creatures, sky flutter with birds." He chuckled as he saw the buzzing of life emerge. "Earth produce life of all kinds. Cattle, reptiles, insects and wild animals began to scurry everywhere." The king was filled with joy. Then the eternal king paused, and his smile became radiant. "Now I will make my family unique creatures just like me. From the earth will their bodies be molded. From my own breath I will implant my seed of life. Their purpose is to reflect my nature. As male and female, they'll be blessed and empowered to manage all my hands have made." The king bent down and lovingly kissed his creatures. The first parents of humanity breathed the king's own life. His breath clothed his family with garments of glory as each radiated his presence throughout the garden. The king looked lovingly at his new family. "Be abundant, make families, manage my masterpiece. All you can see I entrust to you. Let's bless this world together." The angels hushed to watch where the king would place his human family. The east is perfect. The angels could see why. The land was lush, moist and green, and precious stones and metals lay hidden beneath the ground. High on a mountain, the king planted a garden. He caused bountiful trees to grow, laden with various fruit. In the centre of the garden stood the king's majestic throne. The height of the throne reached beyond what eye could see, and at its foot grew two majestic trees. One was the tree of life, and the other the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. From the throne flowed a river which watered the whole region. "Why, the garden you've designed is just like our heavenly garden city in which we worship you," remarked a seraph. "Indeed, my home on earth is a reflection of the beauty of the heavenly garden city we share." The angels listened as the king explained all that had happened on the afternoon of the 6th day. He explained it so well the angels thought they were there as it happened. As the midday sun commenced its descent, the king continued, "I showed my family their new home with all its bountiful fruit. I explained that they could eat the fruit from all of the trees in the garden, except from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Its fruit is poisonous to them, I warned them. If they ate its fruit, they would die." I was sure they understood. Then, as the sun set on the evening of the 6th day, we sat together in our garden and marvelled. You see, I was yet to show them another of my greatest masterpieces. The king leaned back in his throne. When I showed them how the sky turns pink, orange and red, they could scarcely speak. Then I told them they could enjoy such a sight every night. "When the sun sets, another day begins," the king explained. "This sunset begins the most special day of all. Everything that I have made in this majestic land is yours. There are so many wonderful things to discover. It will take you a long time to learn them all. But this garden is not the greatest of my gifts, the best I have saved until now. It is the gift of a day, the 7th day. It will be called Sabbath. We in the royal court want you to always remember we made the whole world for you and your family. So the climax of each week is a day different from all others. On the 7th day, we invite you to draw close and meet with us here at the Tree of Life." As the sun rose, the people opened their eyes and they found themselves lying beneath the shade of the majestic Tree of Life. The king, whom they called Father, was nearby, ready to share the joy of their new world discoveries. "I have appointed you as prime ministers, responsible for guarding and keeping my creation. In the shade of the Tree of Life, I will teach you how to manage my majestic world. You will learn how to cultivate the ground, grow gardens and vegetables, and keep the waters pristine. Later, I hope, we'll build bridges and cities. There is no limit to what we can do together. We will build communities all over the earth. Everyone will live in the blessing of my presence." At lunch, we shared plates of delicious fruit. The table was laden with fruits, seed breads, and vegetables. With each new food, they marvelled at the colours, tastes, and textures. I shared my desire with them to share a meal every Sabbath. I called it a remembrance meal. As dusk neared on the 7th day, the human family were still delighting in the rich fellowship with their Father. My family sat on the soft grass, their stomachs content and their hearts relishing in the loving fellowship they shared. My presence filled the air with warmth, and my gentle whispers perfected their relationships. "And that is how my love story begins," remarked the king. "Well, that has given us much to think about," Grandpa wisely concluded as he closed the book. Timmy dragged Grandpa into the living room to study his precious comic collection. Timmy's eyes eagerly absorbed every page. "So, Timmy, As you can see, Superman's story hasn't changed that much in over 40 years. The old pictures seem to bring a wave of nostalgia over Grandpa's eyes. It's truly remarkable that Superman still lives on. I suppose there is still a world that needs to be saved. The next day, Grandpa drove Timmy and Phoebe to school. Their parents were still away. When Grandpa picked the children up from school that afternoon, they were bursting with news of their day's activities. "We learnt about dinosaurs," exclaimed Timmy. "Well, we started a unit called the Big History Project," interjected Phoebe. "Oh, yes. Tell me more." Grandpa turned the corner into their street. "Dinosaurs lived billions of years ago, and some of them were humongous." "We talked about that as well," added Phoebe. "We learned it all started with a huge explosion, or, as Mrs. Abel called it, a big bang." Grandpa listened as the children chatted about their day and the things that they were being taught. "One thing Mrs. Abel did say that I'm not so sure about is that people are just actually clever animals." Exclaimed Grandpa as he pulled into the driveway. "People are certainly not animals, even if we are clever. Of that I am very sure." Grandma met them as they soon climbed out of the car. The most exquisite purple flowers were growing just down the road. Their colour is incredibly vibrant. I thought we could all walk down and see them. It's only a short stroll. Everyone agreed their neighbour's beautifully landscaped garden was indeed a magnificent sight. The four returned home from their afternoon walk and made their way into the kitchen. The children eyed Grandma's big book still lying on the table. "You know," Phoebe announced, "I think the story we read last night, told by the eternal author, makes the most sense." "What do you mean?" asked Timmy. "Well, the garden we just saw reminds me of the garden the eternal King created all those years ago. The King created people to be responsible for taking care of his garden. When people know the beginning of the King's story and live how he designed them to live, the world will become the beautiful garden the King created it to be." Well, on the last page of every little book of blessing, the author has written a letter to her readers. Dear reader, some things are best explained as a story. This story is part of the Little Book of Blessings series. Each story is designed to illustrate a simple truth about God or tell a story from God's Word in a creative and engaging way. My prayer is that as you read this little book, or as you read the story to your little one, you may be reminded of the eternal good news story told by the grand author before time began. May each story encourage you and give you hope as we await the glorious future God has prepared. If you wish to know more about God's amazing plan for you, I would love to hear from you. With every blessing, Melinda McMahon. Well, don't forget to check out Book 3 that is now available for you to read. Check it out now.